We all know that layoffs can have such a big effect on someone's life, leaving them feeling like a failure, questioning the very value that they contributed to their employer. And it can even lead to permanent changes in someone's career or life circumstances. And that's why it's so important for companies and for human resources to handle layoffs with care, making thoughtful decisions and being transparent about how those decisions are made. In today's video, we're continuing our series on workplace layoffs, and we're going to look at the lessons on gender discrimination that we can learn from the 2022 Twitter layoffs. The content shared on this channel is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney or HR professional for specific guidance on your situation. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your experiences with HR in the comments. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed, creator of the HR Insider. Whether you're an HR professional who's managing workforce reductions or an employee wondering about your rights during layoffs, this video is for you. In this video, we're going to discuss one of the most important considerations when managing layoffs and share insights that can help you better understand the process. To truly understand the lessons we can learn from the Twitter layoffs, we have to go back in time a little bit, specifically to 2022, because that is when it all began. Because in October of 22, Elon Musk acquired X, formerly known as Twitter. And shortly after the acquisition, he began, or Twitter initiated a reduction in force. And that impacted approximately 2,621 employees, which is half its workforce. Then they had a total of 5,134 employees. So quickly after the company was acquired, more than half of its workforce was let go. Most of the employees affected by the layoff were notified by HR on November 4th. So the company was acquired in October of 22, and the first week in November, keep in mind this is right before the holidays, right before Thanksgiving, you had 2,621 employees who were notified, well, you're not going to have a job for the rest of the year. You have been terminated. And among the people who were terminated, there were two women. One was Bernal Strifling, and she was a senior client partner lead from Miami, Florida, and she'd been with X since 2015. And then you had another employee, Willow Rin Turkal, who was a staff site reliability engineer, and she was in the San Jose, California office, and she had been with the company since June of 2021. Both of these women accused Twitter of making layoff decisions that targeted women. And because of the timing, like the company was acquired in October, the layoffs started the first week in November. Both women allege that the decisions were made quickly, without a lot of consideration or analysis of the workforce, and that there were just a small group of managers who even participated in the reduction in force process, and that all of those leaders who did participate were working under Musk's close supervision when identifying which employees would be let go. And so many felt that they were chosen for layoff. Uh, the women who were chosen felt that they really weren't given a clear rationale or a reason to help them understand why they were chosen, and especially in comparison to the number of men who were not chosen. So on December 7th, 2022, Streifling and Turkle both filed a lawsuit on behalf of themselves and all of the other women employees at Twitter, stating that they believe that they had been discriminated against based upon their gender. They sued under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and Turkle also brought her own specific claim in the state of California. When we look at the time frame from the acquisition in October 22 to the layoffs in November, it's easy to see how the speed and scale of the layoffs could raise questions about compliance with legal obligations as well as fairness in selecting who would be impacted. Reduction in force layoffs, that is a huge undertaking. And for it to be done in 30 days, the communication strategy, the notices. There's so much that has to be done. For it to have been done 30 days after it was acquired by Musk, that is, likely that some things are going to be overlooked because of the scale and size of that layoff. But Twitter defended its actions. They basically said that all of the layoffs happen based on job roles, not gender. And they also pointed to the financial challenges facing the organization as justification for the fact that they needed to act so swiftly. So that's one of the reasons why they said the termination took place shortly after the acquisition, is because of um, the financial status of the company. So, if you find yourself impacted by a layoff or someone who anticipates that you could be impacted by a layoff, you might want to consider what is discrimination and how do I recognize it? Well, when conducting layoffs, employers have to either make sure that they are not terminating all of the women. We're talking about gender discrimination today, so that's why I'm focused on women and terminating all of the women. Or if an employer chooses to terminate all the women, they have to be able to clearly explain why all women were selected and none of the men, or why more women were selected. The majority of the women were selected and less men were selected. That's something that an employer has to be able to explain. And so that's one of the first clues in understanding if there is the potential for you to be impacted or targeted or affected by discrimination. The people selected for layoffs are identified and tracked, and depending on the scale, the impacted employees, those who are chosen, have to be told if more women were selected than men. And given the size of Twitter, that would have happened in this case, and it was clear that more women were selected, or if you're in an environment where you can see that more women have been selected, Twitter, in this case, would need to be able to explain why. And they can't just give general terms. They can't say, "Oh, well, we just have financial reasons." It has to be in terms of the decisions made about specific employees that were chosen. If you say financial reasons, well, you have a department or a business unit. Let's say you have 6 men and 6 women, and they're all a part of the same business unit, but you choose to lay off all your women, and then you have 6 men left, and you say the reason is financial. Well, that's not going to explain why the women were chosen over the men. It certainly explains why you need to do the layoffs, but it doesn't explain why more women were chosen. And that's the piece of it that your employer would need to do if you feel like you may have been targeted, or a group of women who were selected may have been targeted. So, what are some of the things that should be expected of HR departments that are conducting layoffs? Well, the first thing, which I think is the most important, is to conduct them legally and ethically. Make sure that there is one of the ways that has been really good, sound um, process, a good and sound process for identifying employees who are going to be impacted by a RIF is to have criteria, objective criteria for those layoffs. Um, what I mean by that is you could base your layoffs on tenure, for example. You could say, okay, every single employee who has been here for greater than 5 years, those people are safe. Everybody who has been here for less than 5 years, those people are not safe. And that really avoids any bias in decision making because you have criteria that you are using that's consistent for every employee. Now, there are going to be times where gender discrimination will not apply because only women are impacted, or the majority of people in a department that was eliminated are all women. So don't take this video to mean that all women can't be terminated because they certainly can be. But the important thing is that the employer has a rationale for it, or there are limited numbers of men who are in that business unit or department or workplace. And as a result of that, the majority of the employees who were selected are women. The second thing you can expect from your HR department is to have good communication with employees. What does that look like? Well, it has to be a transparent, um, communication about what's happening and why it's happening. HR is not going to share everything with employees, of course. Some information is confidential, but if you're doing a layoff, there needs to be communication that allows people to understand what's happening and why. And if there's a massive communication, you need to give people time. I'm sorry, if there's a mass termination, you have to give people time to process something like that. I think in the Twitter case, one of the reasons why it was so poorly received is because it was done within a 30-day time frame. And anybody who's done layoffs know you're letting over 2,000 employees go, and you're doing it within a 30-day period. That is definitely that is a huge undertaking and very difficult to accomplish without having some perception that there's bias. You also should expect your HR department to audit layoffs. They need to look at them to make sure that the people who have been selected aren't targeted. There's no just gender discrimination, which is what we're talking about today, but there's no discrimination whatsoever, is what you want to ensure is happening whenever layoffs are taking place. What are your thoughts on this case? Have you experienced or been impacted by a layoff? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more insights into workplace challenges. And remember, every employee deserves to feel supported in the workplace. See you next time on HR Insider.